calling all the participants, please have seated. Crowell will be starting the program. Okay. A pleasant morning to everyone. Isang makakalikasang araw po para sa ating lahat. And we're here to learn, right? And learn is an acronym. It starts with the letter L. So I hope that you will listen for the whole session. And E for eyes, focus on the screen, concentrate on the screen. And A, which means don't be shy to ask questions. And for those who are participating via Zoom and YouTube, please register your question there, and our team will accommodate all your questions and will be addressed during the open forum. Okay, so after A, of course, you'll be requested to ask some questions related to this topic. Of course, you have to respond here, and let's check. If I say hey, hi, you say hello. Hello. Yeah, so that is the energy level here. So I don't know about our participant in the Zoom and Facebook and YouTube. So I hope you are very eager for today's and for this second topic. And of course, to complete the word learn, we have the N, of course. You have to nurture the learnings acquired and have the courage to apply it in your respective workplaces. Okay, so welcome to the breakout session number 8, the Green Public Procurement Roadmap, brought to you by the none other than the Government Procurement Policy Board Technical Service Office. I'm Engineer Gilbert Mondroy from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And before we get started, allow me to make a few reminders. For our Zoom participants, please change your name using the required format, that is your company or agency name _ your full name for us to properly identify you and monitor your attendance. In order to maintain clarity and to be able to properly manage the time, microphones shall be muted throughout the entire session. Please also be informed that this event is being recorded and is simultaneously being broadcasted live in our official Facebook and on YouTube pages. Please be advised that all questions related to the learning session shall be accommodated by the resource speaker during the open forum. For questions, kindly use your Zoom chat box and our official Slido account. For our Facebook and YouTube live viewers, you may also participate and send your questions through comment section. Participants can start dropping their questions in the Zoom chat box, Slido event page, and Facebook and YouTube live comment section while the learning session is ongoing. To commemorate this event, participants shall also be asked for a group photo towards the end of the program. There you go. Thank you very much for joining our today's activity. Now, today we are thrilled because we are having an entire session on the Green Public Procurement Roadmap. With that, allow me to introduce our resource speaker for our today's session. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our session's resource speaker. Our resource speaker is currently a manager at the Procurement Management Department 2 of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Head Office. She has been in the public procurement practice for 18 years. She started as a technical staff to the National Procurement Specialist hired by the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, and rose to ranks from supervising administrative officer, then as the division chief of procurement and supply division and concurrent head of the bank secretariat. In 2014, she was appointed as director 3, and headed the newly created Procurement Management Service of the DSWD Central Office. Later on, she was appointed as Director 4 of the Department of Tourism in 2018, where she initiated and institutionalized various procurement and administrative reforms. Until her transfer to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas head office last March 2022. Our resource speaker is a graduate of Bachelor of Arts, major in Legal Management at the University of Santo Tomas, and finished Bachelor of Laws at the Far Eastern University or FEU. She became a recognized Government Procurement Policy Board Technical Support Office trainer and has been invited as resource speaker for various government and private procurement trainings, conferences, and seminars since then. And aside from the long list of her credentials, she also satisfactorily completed the 3-level Public Procurement Specialist Certification course in the University of the Philippines, Diliman National Engineering Center. Likewise, she also completed 2 Global Procurement Certification courses from the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. That is in the United Kingdom, particularly the Basic Procurement level in 2017 and the Advanced Procurement in 2019 through the United Nations Development Program. So joining us today in person, please let us welcome with a round of applause, Miss Mary Angeline Tolentino.
Thank you very much, Sir Gilbert. Good morning. Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Good morning to our participants here at the PICC. It's great to see everyone after more than 2 years. This is actually my first face-to-face lecture or presentation. So I'm really glad I did it with the GPP-BTSO. So again, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Good morning to our participants via Zoom. Thank you for participating. Huwag niyo kaming tutulugan. Okay? And of course, to our live viewers through YouTube and Facebook, good morning again. So today, I was tasked to present to you the Green Public Procurement Roadmap. Okay. So next slide. But before we dive into the Green Public Procurement Roadmap, let me refresh your minds. Ano ba itong Green Public Procurement? What is GPP? Well, basically, GPP is the process where public authorities or the government seek to procure goods, services, and works with reduced environmental impact throughout their life cycle when compared to goods, services, and works with the same primary function and that would otherwise be procured. Okay, so ang tatandaan lang natin, when we talk about green public procurement, we procure goods or we acquire goods and services that has less environmental impact. Okay, so diba, napaka-simple, but this is very challenging as well. Alam ko naman, if not all of us, karamihan sa atin are public procurement practitioners, and we all know how challenging it is to incorporate green or how to green make our procurement green. But ngayon, ang task ko po is to present how is it done or how was it introduced in the Philippines. Okay, so next slide. Let me give you an overall background first. Okay, so while all right. So while the GPP or the Green Public Procurement is a voluntary instrument, okay, the government of the Philippines decided po to adopt this concept to develop the country in line with the Sustainable Development Goals agreed by the United Nations or the SDG goals agreed by the UN until 2030. Okay. And the UN 10 Years Framework Program on Sustainable Consumption and Production, SCP. So the idea is that the government leading by example, no, and uses our advantage as the biggest consumer or as a huge purchasing or as the organization that has the huge purchasing power to shape the patterns of growth and eventually achieving green growth. Okay, so yan yung ating drive, no, towards the good practice of green public procurement. The individual policy also of many governments on sustainable consumption and the best practices of these nations provided the inspiration of the Philippines towards adopting the GPP or the Green Public Procurement. After all, no, as you see, after all, green procurement is responsible procurement. So let's keep that in mind and let's take up from there. Diba? Green procurement is responsible procurement. Next slide. Okay, so now let me talk about the intervention logic of the Philippine GPP roadmap. So as mentioned po earlier, no, taking off, diba, from or taking the advantage of the immense power of the government not only to convert the market to a greener market with substantial benefits for the environment, but also to improve the socio-economic status of the nation. So yung idea po of the government being the biggest consumer, yun yung ating kumbaga kick-off point, 'di ba? Doon siya doon tayo kumukuha ng drive, no, to pursue the GPP. The Philippine Green Public Procurement or the GPP roadmap is inspired by the logic that the governments have to lead by example in transforming the market. So later on, as we discussed further, we will see how does the government influence the market towards making it green or making our products have less environmental impact, diba? The strategy, no, of the green public procurement in the Philippines is to integrate, no, green practices harmoniously with existing procurement processes. So hindi ho tayo mag-change ng ating mga policies, hindi tayo mag-change ng mga procurement rules, ng ating mga procurement regulations, but instead, we will be building on those existing policies and integrate green procurement in that existing policies. Over a short term to medium term, the procuring green will become the norm, no? Kasi yun yung yun yung tinitignan natin, no? It's going to be gradual, no? Hindi ho siya bigla na overnight, no? O kaya hindi pwedeng biglang may law na maglalabas na, o dapat green na lahat ng specifications natin. It's not going to be that way, but it's going to be gradual. There are short-term, there are medium-term plans, no, that will eventually lead us to making green procurement as the norm in government procurement or in public procurement. Okay, and also, of course, eventually making an impact on not only the environment, of course, but also in the society and in the economy. Okay, so that's the logic, no, of the Philippine GPPB roadmap. The ultimate goal, of course, is to establish the green public procurement throughout the government from the national level down to the local level. Okay, so it may seem ambitious, but I said we are doing this. No, the government is doing this with you, of course, the procurement practitioners and our colleagues, no, gradually, diba? All right, sige, next slide. Now let me show you a brief history po, no. Paano ba tayo napunta or paano ba nadala itong green public procurement in the Philippines? Okay. Okay, next. All right. So it first started, no, in 1992 during the Rio Earth Summit. Okay. In 1992, it was recognized during the Rio Earth Summit that unsustainable consumption and production patterns significantly degrade the environment. No? Actually, sabi ko nga, even if we didn't actually go there, no? Kasi bata pa ako yung 1992, parang grade 2 lang yata ako nun eh. I won't be there. Baka inantok na kasi kayo eh, so. Ba't natawa kayo? Bata pa talaga ako, mukha lang ako matanda. No? Biro lang. No, but in 1992, doon nag-start no, na, how do I say it, na recognize na yung unsustainable consumption and production significantly affects the environment. It degrades our environment. And therefore, during that summit, there was the commitment to sustainable development through a change in consumption and production. So meron, kumbaga, nung Rio Earth Summit, dito namulat yung mundo na, oy, teka lang, masyado ng harmful sa environment yung manner of our consumption and manner of our production. And therefore, there's a shift, no? And a commitment was fired, no, to change into sustainable development through a change in consumption and production. So over the past 2 decades, the concept of sustainable consumption production is the main paradigm, such that sustainable development in the global market and the main local levels became an important body of the policy concepts with growing attention. So after the Rio Summit, parang governments all over the world na-realize nila, teka lang, parang kailangan natin ayusin yung policies natin to be able to protect our environment in the long run. Next, please. Okay, so within the framework of the Local Agenda 21 or LA 21 that was also concluded in 1992, it was local governments, cities, municipalities, which embarked into the GPP. So nagsimula siya sa local level, actually, as one of their means to fill the LA 21 framework with the real action. Think globally, act globally. So in 1992, yan yung kumbaga drive, no? Sa local level, doon po nagsimula. Local authorities started to procure green through a plurality of self-knitted approaches, which covered items such as stationary goods, IT equipment, cleaning detergents, and in some cases, investment goods such as buildings and even automotive vehicles. So as early as 1992, there's a start of that. Okay, next slide. Now, in 1994, next slide. Okay, so in 1994, during the Oslo Symposium, no, in 1994, the definition, okay, there was this Oslo Ministerial Roundtable Conference on Sustainable Consumption and Production, known as the Oslo Symposium, as mentioned, first provided po yung definition on what is sustainable consumption and production. So as seen on the screen, it's defined as the use of goods and services that respond to basic needs and bring a better quality of life while minimizing the use of natural resources, toxic materials, and emissions of waste and pollutants over the life cycle, so as not to jeopardize the need of future generation. So what we are basically doing is we're minimizing the degrading of the nag-e-echo yung ano ko parang ano ba yun, pang Halloween. Okay, so iniiwasan, so in 1994 dito define yung sustainable consumption, which basically it means bawasan natin yung paggamit ng natural resources at our present time. Let's protect the environment this time so that our future generation will have something to use. Diba? Yung mga anak natin, yung mga apo natin, may matitira sa kanila. So that's just the concept of the sustainable consumption production. Now, going back to the history, a decade after the Rio Earth Summit is the Johannesburg World Summit on Sustainable Development. This is already in 2002, where the concept of sustainable consumption and production, or the SCP po, was reiterated. During this summit, it was also agreed to elaborate on a 10-year framework program on sustainable consumption and production throughout a global effort. Okay? They call this process the Marrakesh process, which basically, kaya siya tinawag na Marrakesh process is because the meeting was held in Marrakesh, Morocco. Okay? And during that meeting, doon noon nag-initiate yung regional consultations on sustainable consumption and production, which started in Africa, in the Arab region, Asia Pacific, Europe, Latin America, and North America. There were also consultations in the Asia Pacific, and you will be surprised that in the Philippines, there were actually 2 consultations held. No? One in 2008 and 2009. So dun pa lang makikita na natin na our government is serious in this initiative. No? And we're giving priority to sustainable consumption and production. Next slide. Eventually, the Rio Plus 20 conference in 2012 adopted the 10-year framework program on SCP, or on sustainable consumption and production, with the United Nations Environment Program as the secretariat to coordinate global initiative. Okay, so nag-start siya as a global movement or a global initiative. And overall, the SCP has the potential to address the bottom lines of sustainable development. That is, as mentioned earlier, our economy, society, and the environment. The SCP has the potential to harmonize or reconcile the domains of economic interest, social balance, and environment protection. That is people, okay, that is planet, and of course, profit or prosperity. Okay. And in 2015, finally, the international community adopted the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to transform the world through an action plan for, again, people, planet, and prosperity. So now moving forward, let's leave the next slide, please. Okay, so let's leave the global arena first. Punta na tayo sa local. Now, let's talk about the Philippine approach on the green public procurement. So, yan. First, no, the GPP roadmap describes a circumspect approach that reflects on issues and concerns such as value for money, suppliers' readiness, capacity, and awareness. So the roadmap was formulated with the broadest participation of stakeholders. So the roadmap wasn't prepared by the GPP BTSO alone or the government agencies alone, but this was an output, no, of the consultations with various stakeholders, including our suppliers. Of course, they're the ones who will be producing the products that we will demand, no, that has green specifications. This has prepared the groundwork, no, of for its implementation through joint effort of the government agencies, of course, and the private sector, and more so, no, the civil society. Okay. Next is a stepwise approach, no, a stepwise and a cautious approach. That's how it's done, or that's the strategy, no, of the Philippines in terms of the GPP. A stepwise and cautious approach will accelerate green purchasing from first tranches of the common supplies and equipment. So as mentioned, no, gradual siya. So nag-identify muna, no, ng priority list, no, of common supplies and equipments which are centrally procured or centrally purchased, no, as mandated under our procurement law from the DBMPS. And also, there is, as part of this stepwise approach or the gradual advancing of the GPP, there are also identified 10 non-common supplies and equipment directly purchased by the different government agencies from the suppliers, no? Okay, and then from there and following the same mechanism that have guided to select the first items for GPP, the scope will eventually expand or eventually and be enhanced. The third approach is the purchasing mechanism or rules starting from the needs assessment to bidding and to the contract awarding remain unchanged. Okay, so as mentioned, we are banking on, or we are working on our existing procurement policies. Kasi we have already established that our procurement law has been recognized internationally as a good law, diba? And we have, aside from the law itself, we have existing policies locally that are also good, such that hindi na natin siya kailangang baguhin to be able to incorporate green procurement in the country. Okay. The next is the best deal for the government or value for money. Okay, so dito basically sinasabi lang natin dito, 'di ba, as the government, no, being the biggest consumer, is that we by knowing, no, our requirements, by identifying our requirements with green parameters, the market will respond, the industry will respond, and they will be able to produce what we need. At the end of the day, we get the best deal and the best value for money. And finally, no, I will repeat, this is inspired by the logic that governments have to take lead by example in transforming the market. No? Kasi again, tayo yung nagdidictate, no, sa how the market will move, in a sense that we procure so much, we procure this much every year in, year out. So pag na-demand natin yan, na ito yung requirements natin, we have already incorporated green procurement, automatically the industry will respond. No? But again, we are doing this gradually or slowly. So numerous international examples, no, exist, and we can adopt the best practices to avoid all possible failures on the way forward. So the best practice to develop a functional GPP program is a stepwise implementation, as mentioned, or gradual approach, building on existing public procurement mechanisms. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are already existing policies on how to adopt this. And if already established, along good practice such as being transparent, fair, non-discretionary, competitive, accountable, and efficient use of public funds, and also very verifiable. The GPP system, or the government or the green public procurement system, should not be more sophisticated. No? So it has to be, there are easygoing tools, no, to be used, this instead of having introducing sophisticated tools and mechanism, diba? Kasi we have already we have established mechanisms already. Marami na tayong policies established. So ang kailangan natin gawin, we work around those and introduce easygoing tools, no, for government agencies to be, and the industry, of course, to be able to adopt and incorporate or institutionalize green procurement. And also a national action plan or roadmap to GPP will unfold in a stepwise proceeding that will build knowledge, skills, attitudes, and awareness along the way forward. So it's really slowly, no, but surely approach, no, ika nga. Next slide. Okay, so now looking at the implementation of the GPP in the Philippines, we will look into the legal and the institutional situation of the GPP in the Philippines, looking into existing legislations, mechanisms, instruments, and key stakeholders, no, for the green procurement. Next we'll also be looking at explicit entry points for the GPP, no, policy commitments to the green public procurement, the avenue of technical specifications, Third will be building on and supporting existing policies like the Philippine Development Plan and international commitments in national legislation. And fourth, of course, the issues and concerns that was encountered during the first introduction of the green public procurement in the Philippines. So briefly lang, let's go over it one by one. The first one is the legal and the institutional situation. So as mentioned, GPP will be using existing legislation and rules. So we will not be revising RA 9184 and its IRR, but instead the government will bank on the existing law. It's still RA 9184 and the existing IRR. And of course, the other relevant laws will be harmonized. In the Philippines, we have various list of environmentally acceptable products. We also have the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. So our procurement law will be harmonized with all these local existing laws, and that will be used to advance green public procurement in the Philippines. And we have interagency, or we have stakeholders or government agencies that working on this one, of course headed by the GPPB, or the Government Procurement Policy Board, through their technical support office. Then we have the DBMPS, who is now leading the ensuring that the identified priority list of common use supplies will have green specifications. Then, and eventually, this will be also our guide, the government agency's guide in procuring other products. And also, other stakeholders, some government agencies are already taking the lead also as champions, to working with the GPPB and the DBMPS. Okay, so yan yung on the legal and institutional situation. The next would be, next slide. Okay, so even as we integrate, try to incorporate or integrate green public procurement in the Philippines, the standards, our procedures remain unchanged. So as procuring entities, a lot of us here are, pwede ko bang makita raise of hand from government agencies? Parang halos lahat, no? Do we have someone here from the private sector? Ayan, si Sir and si Ma'am. Okay, so I've been saying earlier that our standards will remain the same. So as government agencies, as procuring entities, we are still required, number one, to consider the objectives of the project or procurement at hand. Second is to identify the standards to be met by the goods in terms of parameters, including incorporating green criteria. And of course, even as we do that, it will remain the same. The use of brand name or brand labels is still prohibited in our procurement. And of course, the conduct of market survey. So, ang sinasabi natin dito, it's still part of our, it's going to be, nothing will change, but it's going to be part of our procurement planning. When we incorporate green public procurement or green procurement in our respective procurement in our agencies. Next slide. Okay, so explicit entry points for the GPP. We have already excellent preconditions that exist for the systematic uptake or the systematic uptake of the GPP in the Philippines. So we have commitments, of course, headed by the GPPB. Prior commitments have been issued, like the GPPB Resolution Number 15, Series of 2013. This refers to the approval to support the implementation of sustainable and or green public procurement in the government. So it started off with that commitment. And of course, the avenue of technical specifications in the PBDs. So yung ating Philippine bidding documents will allow the use of specifications that refer to the physical description and requirements of the items to be procured, identifying function, performance, environmental interface, and design to integrate green criteria or green technical specifications. So our forms perhaps will be improved, no, later on as we incorporate green procurement. Third is on existing policies. So building on the existing public procurement mechanism, we have the Philippine, sorry, next slide, please. Okay, so we have the Philippine Development Plan. Next slide. Right there. So we have the Philippine Development Plan of 2017 to 2022 that aims to strengthen the nation's aspirations of inclusive and sustainable development through the national efforts. And the green public procurement po is one of the mechanisms in that plan. And also, the government has international commitments and national legislation. So meron ho tayong greening the industry roadmap, no? The National Industry Cluster Program of the DTI. Do we have someone from DTI here? Wala. Okay, Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2000. We also have Toxic Substance and Hazardous and Nuclear Waste Control Act of 1990. An act mainstreaming climate change into government policy formulation. Philippine Green Jobs Act of 2016. So alam niyo ba yun na we have that? No? National Climate Change Action Plan of 2011 to 2028. We also have the DNR AO 2015, no? On Euro 2 to Euro 4, but I think now we already have Euro 6. No? Tama ba, Mr. Gilbert? Euro 6, no? Meron na kasi sa diesel, sa vehicle, meron na Euro 6. Okay, and of course, this is to advance, no, clean air, the Clean Air Act. We also have Electric Vehicle Industry Development Act. So now you will see, no, even the automotive industry nagde-develop na ng mga, or nagpo-produce and nagsisell na rin sila ng hybrid vehicles, di ba? So and because we have policies, we have existing policies on that. There's also the Minimum Energy Performance Standards, the Energy Efficient and Conservation Act, and the Philippines is committed to the new SDGs, including SDG Goal 12, Target 12.7. So we have a number of existing policies already, such that we don't need to introduce more, no, and just build on these existing policies. Next is that the GPP, next slide. The GPP's contribution leads to support local businesses, of course, increase competitiveness, and ultimately help achieve environmental objectives at the national and international level. Next slide. Siyempre, like any other reform initiative, the introduction of the GPP wasn't that easy. Of course, when it was first introduced in the country, there were issues and concerns raised. No? Of course, there's the issue on prudent spending. But the question is GPP prudent? No? The answer is, of course, yes. Diba? If the procurement funds are distributed effectively and impartial, this can also be supported by the exercise of good procurement planning. Okay. Next is there are also questions on cost versus value for money. Kasi ang unang pumapasok sa isip natin when we talk about green products is mas mahal. Diba? Even if we go to groceries, napansin nyo po, when you go to the groceries, there, madalas ako bumili ng, tissue paper. Diba? When you go to the market, you look at tissue paper, tingnan mo yung puti, at saka yung medyo ma-brown. Yung medyo ma-brown, yun yung may green specks. Diba? But if you look at the price, it's higher for a few centavos or maybe a few pesos, di ba? So nung inintroduce yung GPP, yan yung unang tanong. Di ba? Mahal naman no? Versus value for money, worth it ba? Okay? But taking off, no, from the idea, no, the bigger idea that the government is the biggest consumer, if the demand will come from the government, no, that we will procure green products to eventually, no, in the long run, the much better effect in the environment is that mas save natin yung environment, mas less yung effect nito sa environment dahil green yung products na pinoprocure natin or may green parameter siya. If we have that demand, then of course the suppliers will also address that demand, diba? And later on build competition among suppliers, and that it will create competition, no? And also under RA 9184 naman, we'll look into technical compliance with technical specifications or responsiveness with technical specifications. And not only that, we also look at the price. So, diba? Lowest calculated responsive bid. So at the end of the day, ma-address yung cost issue because of the supply or because of the demand and the supply relationship. Okay. There were also questions on the readiness of the suppliers, and verification of the suppliers. So as mentioned, no, since the approach is gradual, the industry will have time to develop, no, the products that will have green components. And prioritization is key. Hindi naman lahat na ng items in government will be required to have green specifications. And then another issue is capacity and awareness, wherein this is being addressed now, like this training or this conference that we have now. The idea is to spread, no, awareness on the green public procurement so that people and even procurement practitioners, us in government, will be able to understand, you know, what is this and build on capacity so that we will be able to institutionalize and implement the GPP in the country. Next slide. Okay, the GPP, no, has a commitment, no, as the GPPB, no, has a commitment and to push, no, green public procurement, and a resolution has been adopted to first nga po identify, no, prioritized items that will have green specifications. Next slide. I will show you. Yan. Okay, so based on the as a result of the assessment or the stakeholder consumption, these are the top 10 or the 10 priority common use supplies identified, no. Of course, in identifying these items, tinignan yung market readiness, environmental impact, cost implications, practicality, and support to government environmental objectives and support to local economy. If you notice, a lot of these items are actually commonly used in industries and also in the private and commercial and even in the households, no? So itong mga items na to, ang laki na nung consumer number nito, kaya logically, these were already prioritized to have green procurement, and these are CSEs available at PSDBM. Next slide. Maybe we can move to the next slide. Next is the GPP, non-common use supplies and equipment, priority items. Ito yung non-CSE. It's not, we are not mandated to procure from DBMPS, but we can procure directly, diba, as government procuring entities. So there's computer, laptop, air conditioners, vehicles, refrigerators, copiers, paints and varnishes, food and catering services, training facilities, hotels, toilet and urinals, and textiles. So again, the same mechanism po was used in determining, no, the same assessment matrix was used in determining this priority 10 items. Okay, next slide. So over the short term, yan yung strategy, no, to formulate green technical specifications and appoint champion stakeholders in government. So ngayon ho, if you look into the GPPB website, they have already uploaded their a manual on green technical specifications to guide us, no, procuring entities. So yan yung first, no, initiative in the short term. The medium term is that GPP will become mandatory for selected, no, non-CSEs and even CSEs, and more products po will be included in the top 10 list. And in the long term, no, plan, of course, is ma-incorporate na natin yung green technical specifications in more items, equipped with green technical specifications, inclusion of social criteria already towards the SPP or sustainable public procurement. Next slide. Nata-timer na ako eh. No, hindi. Okay, sige. So, next slide is just a few more slides now, mga 4-6 slides. Okay, so I'd like to talk more about green procurement pero I'm only allotted not anymore 1 hour, 15 minutes na lang. Okay, so the main argument that speak for GPP have to be conveyed consistently. So yan yung tanong eh, 'di ba? Kasi paano natin to mapupush, no? Paano natin to ma-institutionalize in government? So there should be communication and awareness that the GPP is a measure of prudency that will help the whole country to develop better. Second, the GPP is driven by the government's responsibility to use taxpayers' money to create value and will actually increase value for money. And third, the GPP is not alien to the existing public procurement system and is originally integrated in existing laws, rules, and procedures. Okay, so clear messaging is important. So this is what we want you to remember, diba? As our colleagues in procurement. GPP, or the Green Public Procurement, constitutes a paradigm shift, okay, in public procurement. Next slide. As part of our communication and awareness effort, procurement officers have to understand the features of the GPP guidelines, manuals, and tools to have to be updated. This is why the Green Public Procurement has already been made part of the regular, as module, no, of the regular procurement trainings. Capacity has to be built through training of trainers approach, and leaders have to take part. Now, the recognized procurement trainers of the GPPB have also been trained, no, to talk about the GPP, so that more, so that we'll be able to relay our message across more participants, diba? And then the private sector is a partner or as a strategic partner of the government to make GPP happen, and should be properly prepared, trained, and informed about the new business opportunities through the GPP. So like this Procurement Summit, this is a very good example of a good communication and awareness mechanism, no, done by the government through the GPP BTSO. And then finally, the citizenry or the public shall be inspired by the leading example of the government. Also, next slide, manuals, guidelines, and training tools have been developed. As mentioned earlier, the GPPB has already developed a green procurement manual where you can look into sample technical specifications, but that is continuously being updated or being revised, no, by being revisited, no, by the GPPB TSO. Next slide. Like any other program, of course, no, the GPP also has monitoring, no, in terms of its implementation, compliance, and progress, ensuring the proper implementation of rules and regulations and the effectiveness of GPP. If you notice in our APCPI, or our Agency Procurement Compliance and Performance Indicator System, there's already an indicator on a question on incorporating green specifications, diba? So that's part of compliance and progress. And of course, ultimately on impact, no, the market changes towards green with effects on jobs and income. Entrepreneurs take up the green venture, spillover effect to private corporate procurement, and even in our household consumption. No? It becomes a way of life later on, diba? Tayo nga, kung we are personally conscious about our environment, even if our offices don't procure green, tayo sa bahay, we procure green already, diba? So it's a paradigm shift. You know, with this also, our objective is also to change the attitude, diba? And looking into protecting the environment ultimately. And of course, next slide, the ultimate goal, no, as mentioned, in the successful implementation of the GPP, it will require a joint effort, no, of various stakeholders within their mandates and roles. So you will take note that the GPP having impact not only in the environment, but also in the society and the economy. The stakeholders would involve the government, headed by the GPPB and its TSO, together with the DBMPS, the private consumers, the households and families, the private sector, the manufacturers, traders, vendors, and procurers, and on the finance side, of course, the green investment return of investments and savings. Okay, so it's a whole of country approach in a way. No, lahat tayo ay involved in having or in institutionalizing green public procurement in the country. Next slide. So this is the GPP horizon today and beyond. So looking at 2017 to 2018, yan yung short term, no, which was already done, no, identifying the priority items. 2019 to 2022 is the medium term, where GPP shall be consolidated towards the norm of public procurement in the Philippines. As now we are already incorporating green specifications in our procurement, and may mga champion government agencies na po tayo na institutionalized na nila at their level. And of course, the long term beyond 2022 is advancing GPP to sustainable public procurement, or the SPP. So having said that, I do hope that all of us in government, with our suppliers as our strategic partners, and the rest of the stakeholders, be able to spread awareness, inspire others, and push for the institutionalization of green public procurement in the country. Let us remember that green procurement is responsible procurement. Okay. Again, thank you very much for listening. Bulat naman ako sa 15 minutes.
Hey, Miss, sit muna bago. You can sit here. All right. Thank you so much, Miss Mary Angeline Tolentino, for facilitating a very informative and comprehensive discussion on the Green Public Procurement Roadmap. So, if you still have questions on the topic presented by Ms. Tolentino, please do drop them at the Zoom chat box. Of course, our viewers in Facebook and YouTube Live may also drop their questions using the comment section. And we have a trivia trivia question. So we have this question for the day. So please be ready using your Slido. And for those who are attending via Facebook and YouTube. Okay. Question. What is the main slogan for green public procurement? Oh, madali lang to, no? What is the main slogan for green public procurement? Okay. So habang sinasagutan po nila ating pong trivia question. So you go to the www.slido.com, you type event code hashtag FY 2022 Procurement Summit BSA. Ayan. Also, I would like to encourage all the online participants to answer. Okay. All right. So let's resume. At this point, we will be having the open forum. I would like to remind again our participant that questions which are initially gathered from our Q&A facility, chat box, and Facebook and YouTube live comments sections are filtered, as our resource speaker shall only be answering questions related to our plenary discussion. So once again, I would like to call on our resource speaker, Miss Mary Angeline Tolentino. Ma'am? Or would you prefer to be seated or standing? Okay.
Sabihin ko sana the questions will be answered by our colleague from the DNR. Hindi pala ako excuse.
So I'll be answering noted. All right. From our participants here, who would like to give the first bullet, I suppose? Sir. Ayan.
Again, Dr. Tan here from Carlos Hilado. No, we really are partners in educating our people, meaning the Filipino people, for some aspects on how they would be protecting the environment, basically. And on our end, as procuring entities, no, something like that, we have to put some teeth on how we could really put or realize what really wanted to do. My question is this: often we look at this as something that we should not really pursue, on how we could really change the mindset of the people. But do you have identified policies which maybe we could look at as carrot and stick, no, but I do not like to have the stick thing. No, we have to incentivize procuring entities or whatever, no, so that we could realize this. And do you have any attempts? And second is, maybe, do we have any attempts to quantify, based on the second phase, the medium plan that we have in the roadmap as of this time, quantify the amount in which there is a trend that increases or decreases the green procurement? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for that question. No? I totally agree, 100%, that to be able to kumbaga push all the procuring entities to implement green procurement is, yun nga sabi nila, dapat may ipin, di ba? Or I don't know, may penalty ba pag hindi ka naglagay ng green specifications. But I think with the gradual approach that our GPP or in the Philippines, the gradual approach in the Philippines, I think yung putting the teeth is perhaps hindi or punishing somehow yung hindi mag-comply. I think hindi pa tayo ganon at that level. Even if we would like to mandate already our government agencies na mag-green na, parang hindi pa ganun. But ang nakikita ko, sir, is that compliance with the procurement, at least of common supplies and equipment. Kasi po, di ba, as procuring entities, we are mandated to procure our CSEs from PSDBM. That's in the law. So PSDBM being the lead, no, in the or the main supplier or the central supplier of our common use supplies, mafo-force tayo na makakabili tayo ng green item kasi yung CSE dapat may green parameters. No, but I understand, no, yung nakita po natin kanina na top 10 is perhaps hindi pa lahat, but we are I'd like to say, sir, we are going towards that. As to giving incentives, no, to manufacturers, suppliers, and all. As mentioned, this is kumbaga a whole of government approach. So other government agencies, not really GPP-BTSO alone, but they're working with other government agencies like the DTI, Bureau of Product Standards, for instance, wherein sila ho yung nag-develop ng policies and even opening windows perhaps for our suppliers or even our SMEs, no, to be able to start off yung pag-produce ng products that has green components. And your second question, sir, refers to I think the GPPB now in the dashboard has a green procurement. There's a green procurement portion in the dashboard. No, but we'll have to confirm that with the GPP-BTSO. Parang I know they have started this no in the dashboard. So para makita natin kung anong produkto. Yun ba yung inano or ilang agencies na yung nagpo-procure, nag-i-implement ng green procurement. Oh, so their procurement champions, their government agencies are already considered procurement GPP champions, no? So makikita I think siya in the dashboard sir of the GPP BTSO. They have developed this dashboard, 'di ba? Kung saan nakikita natin yung data ng ating procurement. Kasama po doon yung green procurement. Okay. Pero interesting to note then to see that sir siguro maybe in the near future come up with a report no ilang government agencies na talaga yung nag-implement or nag-adapt ng GPP.
Yes, sir. Please.
PS Depot has to start that all their
Yeah.
their products have to be green certified or something like that. But the director, have a lot of technical description still of what is going on, which I think it would still take time.
Yes, and may I add, Ma'am Angeline?
Ayun, yes, of course, from DNR.
If we're talking about what is the level of performance or the levels of accomplishment the government has been through with the introduction of our green public procurement, there is a report coming from PS from the pilot items. Basically, we are mandated to buy yung government agency. Kailangan natin bumili ng mga items sa PSDBM. So, in that case, we are forced to comply. And basically, because of compliance to law, then considering the outcome of the different agencies buying from PS, they were able to identify which of these 10 pilot items, yung 10 items na na-identify po nila, kung nagagamit at tawag dito, pinibili ng mga government agency. So from there, yung data na yon, I think there is already a revisiting of that items. So to consider whether tanggalin doon sa list of the 10 items that being considered with green core criteria, no. So or to extend other items to put in specification with the green. Please remember that this program by the government is still in its infancy. I think, and I don't know if all of you are very familiar already with green public procurement, even if you're already in the government, no? Unless you are enrolled in the PBB, considering that it is one of the criteria, no, using green products, and to include it in your self-assessment tools, the APCPI. Tama po yun, no? So, kung hindi naman po kayo sa PBB, then more often than not, you will not be aware of this green public procurement program of the government. As a matter of fact, prior, there has been a proposed law, no, creating the green procurement, green public procurement to be a law. Pero medyo hopefully na maisalang po uli sa House. Yan. So alam niyo naman po sa atin sa gobyerno natin, kapag hindi nasa batas, medyo napakahirap po na anuhin yung mga tao, no, na mag-comply. Yan. So alin lang sa dalawa lang yan, either the government with its vast budget, no, with the law of supply and demand, can influence the market to supply the green products to us, and thereby kung medyo marami na yung green products na yan, eventually Hindi na yung ating pagtingin na mataas ang presyo, no, initial yung face value niya. So magkakaroon tayo ng parang paradigm shift patungkol dito sa mga green products and services. Mamanj, meron pong online question from a Zoom participant. And this is his or her question. Are there available listings? No? Ang tinitingnan niya yung mga listahan eh. Meron na bang listahan like the halal seal or GPP seal?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yun lang po yung nilagay niya dito kaya yun lang po yung stop ko lang
Sige.
yung question.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
from what I know, what we have now, yes, the one example nga yung kanina binanggit ko, DTI, Bureau of Product Standards, there are already products or items. Yung common, for example, yung mga ilaw, diba? Meron na yung seal that it is green or environmentally friendly. When we procure air conditioning units, for instance, diba? Or yung sa mga refrigerator, meron ng mga consumption rate, no, or markings whether the same is green or eco-friendly, no, and that is being supervised or being looked into by the other national government agencies in charge of the developing standards or monitoring standards. In terms of sa food, na-mention lang yung halal. Yeah, I see this in restaurants. We also have government agencies who establish, no. Ang problema lang ho siguro, ang hinahanap siguro ng ating participants sa Zoom is a single listing, no, of all the items. Perhaps that is one good suggestion, no. Maybe there's one portal that says na ito. Kaya lang, we also have to balance it, 'di ba? Kasi sa procurement, pag may listing kasi ganun, we have to balance that with our existing rules. Kasi if the list will come in, definitely brands yung mag-a-appear doon, 'di ba? But we are not kasi allowed. We are prohibited under the rules to specify brand names. So ang importante pa rin dito nakikita ko is we know what is green technical specifications so that we incorporate that in our requirements. If I may be allowed, balik lang ako dun sa sinabi ni Sir Gilbert, no, about existing law, and this question is, sir, actually I remember now in 2004 there's an executive order, no, EO 301, I think this is signed by former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, establishing green procurement, no, program for all departments, no, agencies and instrumentalities under the executive department kasi it's an EO. So as early as 2004 meron na yan, pero siguro nga po kaya nga the GPPB is continuously doing efforts, no, to make our government procurement practitioners aware of green public procurement and also incorporating that in our existing policies like the APCPI para ho unti-unti nating ma-adapt, no, and ma-develop, 'di ba? So yun nga, paradigm shift kasi siya. So hindi siya pwedeng mangyari like in 2 years or so, no, parang unti-unti, step by step yung pag-approach natin dyan. And kayo, being here, no, and learned about the GPP, I'm sure you will also be able to slowly incorporate this in your own procurement, even if the items that you will procure are not within the top priority list, diba? Kasi we can initiate naman as procuring entities.
Right.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, time's up, and that already concludes our open forum. If you have more questions, you may still ask them out even after this webinar by visiting lido.com, to which the GPVTSO will answer through an issuance or through a frequently asked questions. And of course, with that, we would like to thank our resource speaker, Ms. Mary Angeline Tolentino, for leading a very informative and comprehensive discussion on session for today, and for graciously accepting our invitation to be part of this online training. By the way, we have a winner But ano lang po, no? Some info lang po. Yung pong nauna ay nanalo na po kasi. So this will be the second person. So the trivia winner would go to Mr. Jonas Ebora. I think he is on site. Yan, sir. Please. Okay. So ano na lang po, sir. Let's give him a round of applause, si Sir Evora. Prizes to be claimed to the organizers. Ayan. Pala. Alright. Parang nagkahabol tayo, no? So, as our session ends, let me provide you with a synthesis of our today's activity. Today, we have learned the intervention logic of the Philippine government Green Public Procurement Roadmap. This roadmap simply describes that the government shall take the lead by example in creating green market, building on existing policies and laws, inspired by the international best practices, and addressing stakeholders' issues and concerns. Strategies for way forward includes policy commitment, GPP for CSEs and NCSEs, or Green Public Procurement for common supplies equipment and non-common supplies equipment, communication and awareness, and to include monitoring, which are expected to have a positive impact on environment, the society, and economy, thereby establishing the green public procurement throughout the national and local government towards innovative and sustainable public procurement. Yan. So before we end our today's session, allow me to make a few final reminders. We would like to remind again our participant to please accomplish the evaluation through Google Forms by visiting the link provided in our Zoom chat box and QR code provided in your respective area. Rest assured that the information gathered from you for this online training will be treated with utmost confidentiality consistent with the provisions of Data Privacy Act. We hope that the discussion and information shared in this event will provide clarity and a better understanding of the policies and guide as you join in all stages of the government procurement. And on that note, that concludes the second day of Procurement Summit. This has been your facilitator, Engineer Gilbert Mondroy. Thank you and mabuhay. And may we invite you for a group photo first before proceeding to the plenary hall for the closing ceremony and grand raffle. Okay? All right, you may now proceed to the plenary hall. Yan. And again, isang mga kalikasang araw sa atin.